heated congressional hearing erupts as Representative Don Bacon confronts a top Army official over the sudden removal of U.S. armored brigade rotations from Eastern Europe, warning the move sends a dangerous signal to NATO allies while Russia's war in Ukraine continues to escalate.
Yes, sir. I'm not on the policy side here.
But you are the Chief of Staff of the Army. There is no good explanation why we just removed 2 armored brigades from Eastern Europe. There's got to be some explanation.
Well, sir, I think as they reviewed the force structure, the conclusion was that we could repack one of the brigades that are in the rotation. One brigade that's in the rotation pull that we send over to Europe. There's still another brigade there. There's still a division headquarters that's in rotation there. We still have 5th Corps that is over there as well.
But we pulled the brigade out of Romania. Now we're pulling the brigade out of Poland. Is there a plan to replace that brigade in Poland?
You would have to ask the COCOM commander, sir, on how he's going to maneuver the forces that he has. We still have a force structure that is permanent force structure that's in Europe supporting our allies through both exercises and continual presence on the continent.
I know I may not represent 100% of people in this committee, but I think I represent the views of the vast majority. We disagree. Russia has invaded Ukraine. Have they given us any concessions to withdraw 2 armor brigades out of Europe as they're invading Ukraine? What concessions have they given us as we withdraw forces?
Sir, I can't answer that question.
Well, I know it's none. This is why it's so foolish. We're sending a terrible message to Russia and to our allies. Here's another question. Do we know if Poland was notified by the secretary?
We don't know.
Well, I already know the answer because they called me yesterday. They did not know. They were blindsided. These are some of our best allies. And they had no idea. They still don't know what the plan is. They know, okay, the order was stopped. They don't know if this is just a suspension or permanent. We owe Poland, and our Baltic friends, who are very vulnerable from this decision, a better explanation here. And a rational, we should be doing this before we actually make the decision. We should be coordinating with them. It's an embarrassment. I'm telling you, this is an embarrassment to our country, the way this is being handled. And I happen to know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask. You said we coordinated with UCOM. I can guarantee you they did not say this was low risk. Can you verify that? Because I happen to know they say it carries risk. So in other words, it was coordinated with UCOM, but they did not say this was a low-risk decision. Am I right?
Sir, those discussions, that risk statement from the co-commander back into OSW, it's not part of what the Title 10, of the Army does.
I was just hoping as the Army chief they would keep you better informed. But I happen to know this because I served in NATO. They did not say this was low risk. So in other words, the Secretary of Defense made this decision over some objections of the UCOM commander. That's what I submit here. I just want to say this is a slap in the face to Poland. It's a slap in the face to our Baltic friends. I think it's a slap to the face in this committee because we've put floors and restrictions on the Pentagon and further reductions in Europe because of what they did with Romania. They told this committee, or the leadership of this committee, that we were not going to, there was no plans to remove this brigade from Romania. Then a week later, it was done. So then we responded in the NDAA to prevent this kind of behavior, and it's happened again. And I think this committee, under the chairman, the ranking member, we got to hold the secretary accountable for this decision. It's wrong. Okay, my second question, I know I'm the Baltic security chairman. Latvia and Estonia have HIMARS, but they just have the launchers. They don't have the warheads or the weapons. What is the plan to fill that?
Sir, there is a long-term plan to fill the munitions, and it's part of production and all of that with the industrial base to be able to get the munitions over there. Sir, I've served over there too, so I fully appreciate your concerns.
It's hard to deter when you don't have the weapons to go on the launchers, but I know that our Baltic friends love this country. They're vulnerable. They love freedom. They lived under the Soviet rule. And I think the decision of being slow on helping them deter, but also doing what we did in Poland sends a terrible message. And they question, can they trust America? And that's a terrible, terrible thing to happen when you lose trust with your closest friends. With that, and by the way, I say this again, I know this isn't your decision. It came from the Secretary of Defense. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Chairman. This exchange between Representative Don Bacon and a senior Army official centers on a high-stakes and politically sensitive issue: the reported removal of armored brigade rotations from Eastern Europe during an ongoing war in Ukraine. Bacon opens with immediate skepticism, framing the decision as strategically foolish and questioning why the United States would reduce its armored presence in NATO's eastern flank while Russia remains actively engaged in Ukraine. His tone is direct and confrontational, signaling concern not just about military logistics, but about the message such a move sends to allies and adversaries alike. Throughout the exchange, Bacon repeatedly presses for clarity on coordination, whether NATO allies like Poland were informed, whether U.S. European Command supported the decision, and whether the risks were fully understood. The answers he receives are cautious and procedural, emphasizing that force posture decisions involve multiple command layers and strategic reviews rather than simple unilateral choices. However, Bacon rejects that framing. Instead, he interprets the move as a breakdown in coordination and trust, particularly with frontline NATO states such as Poland and the Baltic nations. He argues that these allies were not properly consulted and suggests the decision risks undermining deterrence at a critical moment in Europe's security environment. The tension escalates as Bacon asserts he already knows parts of the answer from his NATO experience, effectively challenging the official narrative and implying internal disagreement within the chain of command. He concludes by calling the decision an embarrassment, both in substance and in process, and signals that Congress must exercise stronger oversight over Pentagon force posture changes. What emerges is a broader policy conflict, the Pentagon's effort to manage global force distribution versus congressional concerns about deterrence, signaling, and alliance reassurance. At its core, the hearing reflects an ongoing debate about how much risk the United States should accept in Europe while simultaneously balancing global military commitments.